Welcome back to You Got Moxie. Today's episode is part of our special series recorded live at the 2024 Georgia State of the Industry, hosted at Trilith Studios. Joining me is Fernando Garibay, renowned record producer, songwriter, and author, whose groundbreaking work has shaped the music industry and inspired countless artists. In this conversation, Fernando shares his fascinating journey from using music as his first language to collaborating with some of the world's biggest stars, including Lady Gaga. He explores how music and storytelling serve as powerful tools for diplomacy, community building, and change-making. We also discuss the future of creativity in a rapidly evolving world, including the role of AI and the importance of embracing cross-disciplinary knowledge to drive innovation. This episode is thought-provoking and dives into the intersection of art, technology, and human connection. Before we dive in, here's a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Frank Patterson from Trilith Studios, and we are thrilled to present this special mini-series of You Got Moxie, recorded live at the 2024 State of the Industry event right here at Trilith Studios. At Trilith, we set the stage and enrich the lives of the story makers who inspire the world. And when we say story makers, we're talking about world-class innovators, creators, and makers who we believe are driving change. And that's why we're partnering with You Got Moxie, a podcast dedicated to meaningful conversations about the how of change making. This just makes sense to us at Trilith. To learn more about Trilith Studios and our vision for the future of storytelling, check us out at trilithstudios.com. Now enjoy this episode of You Got Moxie, live from the 2024 State of the Industry event.
Welcome to You Got Moxie, the podcast about the how of change-making. I'm Julianne Crommett, and we're here live from the Georgia State of the Industry Summit in 2024, to time date us. And it's a pleasure to have with us today Fernando Garibay. Yes.
Thank you.
Who is an amazing voice from the music industry, producing, teaching. You do it all, my friend. You do it all.
I do a lot, yeah.
So it would be great if you could share a little bit about your work and what you're up to, and maybe as part of that, how you think about change and change making in your work.
Yeah, so I followed a very unorthodox lifestyle and how I turned what I feel, my affective understanding of the world, into things that change perspectives for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started when I was 3, and I couldn't figure out how to connect with the world. I just couldn't understand language. And so, but music was very clear for me. It very instinctually understood the relationship between what I'm feeling and what that means in the world, and what something that makes noise and sound. So there's a very fundamental language in the order of things that music conveys at a higher bandwidth of transmission than language. Language, it's a limited frame of communication, right? So you can see it as based hierarchically in the order of how music predates vocabulary.
Sure,
right?
sure.
As intrinsic language for human beings. So that was my relationship to the world, and so that shaped how we connect and my views as to what I would be doing for the rest of my life, which is first starting to make music with the biggest pop stars, and then help change and influence genres.
Exactly right.
And then that changed and influenced communities, and then led to a need to develop the vocabulary for this, which I got into academic work. And then that led to I believe the higher order of the creative essence of what I do is diplomacy.
It's phenomenal. And also, by the way, a little shout, when he says the most famous pop artist, he also means Lady Gaga is part of that. And I just have to give you a shout for any of
Absolutely.
our fans here of Born This Way. And really, the journey, it's so interesting when you describe your own journey. I think about her musical journey and evolution, and this idea of like higher order and connection in the music just seems so parallel.
I learned so much from her, and the opportunity to work with, thinking about her audience as a community, thinking about the level of potential impact that was there with her artistry, and just looking at how that that body of work really changed and influenced identity at a massive scale.
Yes.
And so that again framed out some of these models that we use today to working at on the state level, on the country level, on the international organizational level.
Yes.
How we can leverage our storytelling, our content, our music to amplify communities that need a bigger voice or
That's
could
right.
use a bigger voice or a new narrative.
That's absolutely right. And it's so, one of my favorite quotes from an activist in the Muslim community, Dr. Suad, and I'm forgetting her last name, amazing. And she said, "Don't be a voice for the voiceless, just pass the mic."
Oh, that's really good.
And
Yeah,
I think it's
makes
really
sense.
succinct because it really talks about this power of community and of voice, but also agency and voice and self voice and communal voice. And I think you were talking about community building with Gaga and what you learned, and now you've tied it to diplomacy. And so I think a lot about we unfortunately have been so siloed between disciplines, right? In the way often that our academic work, I'm sure you're sitting at home and you've always thought, man, I like the sciences and I also like the arts, but they've
Sure.
made me separate it, right, at some point, or public policy or whatever it might be. But in actuality, we have to be working across all those disciplines when we think about the future of where we're going and when we think about community. And so I'm thinking about where we are today, Georgia State of the Industry, your own journey that you just described on that evolution, right? Why is gathering together in person in opportunity for creative collision or just collision of ideas and folks from all different backgrounds, which is what we have here, so critical when you think about creativity, when you think about change making? Why is that intersection, why is that community aspect just so critical, especially in events like this?
It's so interesting. I can give a
Yeah.
lecture on all those points. You pointed out 10 different dimensionalities of how
Yes.
we operate today that's different from the past. So, where we're at with the siloed specialization of disciplines, specifically academic. So you go to, we have since the 20th century, we've identified the need for specialization as it was a transition into the post-industrial world.
That's right.
And so that worked for that period of time, which is argued whether it's the formalized Italian model of education or the post-Rockefeller, Rothschild S type of models of education. And so that worked for that period of time. It didn't work when we were in agrarian culture, where we had to learn how to do, farm, agriculture, understand the topology of the land in order to better
right.
harvest, and then how to trade that harvest for economic return. Right. So these different evolutions of autodidactic mechanisms have worked temporally. So specific subsets of time require subsets of defining our roles in the community.
That's right.
Right. So again, we have pre-agrarian Enlightenment era had its own specific rules, which was required higher order thought to pioneer new ways of thinking. And then we had industrial and impulse industrial mechanisms that required a more structured, specific disciplined output, right? So we have to go and study something specific.
Yep.
Hyperspecialization, they call it. Now we're in the era of, well, I like to call it project-based knowledge.
Interesting.
And the cultures that are going to drive communities that are going to drive change, I believe, are going to be the ones that realize and detether their identity from what they do and what they study to project-based multi-hyphenate approaches to
That's right.
understanding who they are, their possibilities, and what they do in the future in a world where most of the hyper specialization work will be offloaded arguably to synthetic intelligence.
Wow. And I think, not only is I feel like that's spot on in terms of the evolution, but also this need, you and I were on a panel today around AI, which is a topic of the day, but this question of sort of, it can feel overwhelming, right? Especially for artists right now, in thinking about how do I engage with that evolution that's naturally happening of my place as an artist, my place in community, and many questions around, at least for me, and I'm sure for a lot of our audience members, sort of, where do I start or where do I continue, so that I feel like I'm growing in my own cross-disciplinary knowledge, right? At the same token as growing in my own creativity or my specialization, right? Because there's now this almost this balance is being asked or this integration that's being asked. And so, how do you think about that? Or what advice do you have for folks who are sort of feeling that sense of feeling overwhelmed or inundated by that? Yeah.
There are many thinkers who believe in the behavioral sciences that the procrastination of action is the formidable force of anxiety.
Huh.
Right. So
Say that again,
yeah.
because that's
So
so
the
good.
procrastination of action is the formidable force of anxiety.
Yes.
So without fear is going to be the first natural order of things, right?
Right.
Fear of the unknown, of the risk, what are the implications? Will I be good enough? Would it
Yeah.
be something I can manage?
Right.
How will it affect me? All these things
Yeah.
will lead to this paralysis, right?
Yeah.
And of analysis, obviously. But
Right.
the key is you have a window of time, and it's inherent and very clear that most of those who adopt AI tools in their daily activity, will be ahead of the oncoming wave of change.
Yes.
So it's a good proxy of social media. Was a good example of this, right? And I've experienced this. It was always about my perspective was always about do the work, do the work. So I came from that mindset of do the work,
Right.
and then the work will speak for itself.
Right.
That model of focusing on doing the work worked pre 2010. But when social media came, it changed the distribution models from the work being the key focus point, and specifically to music and art and film.
Sure.
Right? And the work being a testament to how great you are, extraordinary or talented you are, to the story alongside that work became more important.
Yes.
The distribution of that work,
Yes.
the narrative, and that's a good kind of litmus to what can happen now. Is as the used to prior to social media, it used to be the work would dictate your success, like the quality of work, and then people knowing the quality of work would solidify your brand reputation as a human, and you get hired to do more work. Now, I think we're shifting into a place where obviously the narrative is critical, how you frame your work, how you tell your story, and everyone has access to distribution for that, social media. But equally, AI plays a similar role in that change, in that, well, if you think about AI and doing the work, well, it actually changes, I believe, to focusing on the first principles of the work that you do, right? What are the fundamental aspects of what you do? For example, let's look at art. It's based on my skills, which is honed down by not 10,000 hours, but maybe 20,000 hours of exploratory work towards mastery.
That's right.
So doing that work was traditional to be great as an artist, and then another 10,000 hours of field work, right? Stage time presence, trial and error, etc.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where like you have a real shot to sustain your career.
That's
not
right.
a one-hit wonder. Okay. But now a lot of that work can be fast tracked, right? We can model out like, oh, I want to be an artist like of this sort, and this is what my world's going to look like. Here are my colors, here are my brand tones, all these things you can already model. So that takes away a lot of the experimentation, but it still allows for a very important factor, the human spirit.
That's right.
Which is, and when we define human spirits, it's all the affective, limbic, consciousness, style, personality, vision, imagination. That's still very human. So that's what's going to be important. So that's what's changing as when we think about, the future role of who you are and how you use AI, and how that's very similar to the transition that happened with the barrier of entry point to social media.
Absolutely. And I think what you said that's so critical as part of that is to get ahead and be experimenting with it now. Don't wait,
of
because
course.
otherwise the wave will just come and hit you.
Harder.
It's physics, right? Exactly. And so as we wrap, you came out, you flew out for this event. You're based out in California, but you came here to Georgia to join us today for this event. Why Georgia? Why is it so important, do you feel, to show up in places like the State of the Industry and in a place like Georgia when you think about the future of creating and change making?
Well, Trilith and Frank Peterson, obviously because of their extraordinary work here, but they're on the forefront of how to think through and act immediately on that knowledge set to engage these AI tools to create a flourishing environment for humans.
Yes.
And not displacement.
That's right.
Right. So there's a process of, I believe, of ownership of the human being to adopt these tools and be responsible for adopting these tools rather than blaming a system for being left behind.
That's right.
Right. So that's a critical element. And the other aspect is, well, the future is usually formed by change makers. Change makers, from my recent case studies like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, etc., have been inspired, Steve Jobs, inspired by film, literature. But film specifically is the modern, arguably literature. It's how people understand the world, right?
Correct.
And so that is important. If you can shift film perspectives to inspire future generations, fast track that process with the AI, lower the barrier to entry to the access point so most humans can engage no matter where you come from, what background, what country, what identity, you really have a shot at changing the world.
That's 100% correct, and leads you back to the beginning of your story when it was the build all the way to policy making, because that's how the thread connects together. And I've always believed, and that why we have You Got Moxie and Collective Moxie, is that if you don't change the narrative and the stories, then nothing else changes.
That's correct.
It influences everything else, and then you can actually have good policy and move us in the right direction.
The way we shape our thoughts are through story, right?
Yes,
so
correct.
It's really it's how you frame the knowledge into something that resonates with your human spirit.
That's exactly right. And it all ties back to that human spirit at the end of the day. It's in the uniqueness and in the specificity that we have universality.
And that's the challenge. Where's my value? The question is, I get the most, is where's my value as a human when AI can do something specific? So they don't say the specific, but they say when AI can do what I do better. It's not the case that you do better.
Nope.
The case might be that you've maybe not have the adequate or necessary ways of thinking about what makes you human and your value.
Correct.
And so part of that process that we're doing now is helping the world through our institute, the Garibay Institute, understand that humans are extraordinarily valuable and will be valuable.
Correct.
So long as they focus on adopting tools like this.
That's right.
While enhancing and empowering the human spirit.
That's exactly right. And with that, I cannot thank you enough, Fernando, for joining us today,
Thank you
for joining us here with You Got Moxie. I hope you have a great rest of the festival.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks again for joining us for You Got Moxie. Continue to follow us and listen to your favorite episodes at collectivemoxie.com. That's collectivemoxie.com. We're excited to see you next time. Take care.